Isaiah 34:6. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, with the blood of lambs and goats, the fat of kidneys of rams. For Yahweh have a sacrifice in Basra, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. All right. And the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of Yahweh's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Call halal Yahweh B'Hashem Awashai B'Hashem Rakad Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so, now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth among the heathen nations that look like the heathen nations. And to the Akwath that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago, coming at you another lesson in truth. And primarily, it's only the Great Millstone and the brothers who teach the likewise doctrine, who admit that they learned from the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, that speak about the Bible in its entirety. All right. And speak about especially the scattered elect that are scattered among all the heathens. That, this isn't a black or white thing. This is an Israelite thing. All right. But what you're looking at on the screen was, I'm going to play like 3.5, maybe 4 minutes of this video where this young sister you see at the top of the screen speaks and addresses this meeting that Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was presiding over. And she begins to speak about, so-called Negroes being Jews. Well, truth being that the so-called Negroes here in America, for the most part, are Judeans, are from the kingdom of Judah. All right. That term Jew was made up a couple hundred years ago. I have in front of me the invention of the Jewish people by Shlomo Sand. All right. Who was Shlomo Sand is a professor at the Israeli University. And this book was very controversial. And anytime, and like I said, I just read about the controversy of Zion. And the Lord is going to destroy Basra, Idumea, Edom, who happens to be the so-called white people, for the controversy of Zion. So if you put 2 and 2 together, all right, Edom is claiming to be Zion. That's the controversy. Like the controversy you're going to hear here. All right. And this was put up by the Holy Bible defenders. And it was put up about, it says 20 hours ago. All right. And someone sent this to me, or a beloved brother sent this to me earlier, one of the elder brothers in the camp. And I watched it, and right there in that, right there on the spot, I was like, oh Lord, I have to, the Spirit jumped on me. This is the one. So once again, we're on the Critical Race Historical Facts channel. This is, I'm trying to make my way back to the Malcolm in the GMS Maccabean spirit to get into more geopolitical things. But this is a big part of prophecy, the controversy of Zion. This is an end day prophecy as well, and a very big one, because these people want to us to maintain these false identities that they put over us. So here in page 30 in Shlomo Sand's book, it says, now at the top, nationalism in the Western world in the late 20th century and beginning with the 21st century has not weakened this trend. Indeed, it in some ways has strengthened it. All right. Construction of a nation. See, construction. A nation, all the nations were created in the beginning. Right. A landmass doesn't constitute. Think about it. Every place on the planet, for the most part, a country, a landmass doesn't constitute your race. All right. If you were born in Australia, doesn't mean you're an Australian. All right. It just means you were born in Australia. Because if you learn who the original inhabitants of Australia, you would know that they were the original inhabitants of Europe before they got pushed out of there. Okay. And that's one thing that's not acknowledged in this modern era. They label people, these titles that they self-create by landmasses, not acknowledging that the majority of the places outside of most of the places in Africa, or a big portion of Africa, um, most people are not in their original lands, even in Africa. The Egyptians are not in Egypt. You have Arabs and Elamites and Edomites in you know, you got the Arabian Nights, you know, in Egypt. But Egypt was what you know was Hamites, so-called Africans, the sons of Ham, right? The Ethiopians are sons of Hams, you know. Yet some of them are in Israel, all right? You know, as a matter of fact, now that I mentioned that, I'm just gonna go to the evidence folder. Let's go to the evidence folder and pull up some evidence. Here we go. So, right there it tells you Ham, the youngest son of Noah, the youngest son of Noah, the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Canaanites are no longer in the land of Israel. They're no longer in North Africa, for the most part. All right, and they're definitely not in Egypt. Okay, Mizraim, the Hamites, those Africans you see on the right. All right, they're not the people that are in the land of Egypt. Ishmael is in the land of Egypt and in mostly in Syria. You know, there's still some Israelites mixed in, and in Palestine. Those are mostly Ishmaelites. All right, they're not the actual Palestinians. You know, that goes back to the Philistines, and Philistines were Hamites. Once again, let's look at the Hamites. See, and that's another lie that they try to make the Philistines white in their books. They try to make the Philistines white in their movies. But the Philistines were sons of Ham, and Ham was the progenitor, the father of the dark races, the four African nations that dominated all of Africa and the lands north of it. All right. So, back in Shlomo Sand's book, it says on page 30, constructing a nation can also lead to the opposite outcome. Cultural linguistic minorities, which had not been sharply defined before the era of nationalism, began to acquire owning a hastily engineering dictated from the center or alienating discrimination or new distinguishing sense of identity. Modernization can intensify subtle differences, which is why once this girl says that Kanye was white and that they were the Jews, then this Jewish lady gets up and gets applauded because she says she disagreed and she's been Jewish all her life. Well, you know what? You can have the Jewish. The suffix ish means to be like. Your very definition of your name identifies the fact that you're not an Israelite. You can have your Jewishness. Nobody wants to be Jewish. All right, but everyone wants to be an Israelite. And Jewish people, primarily outside of the actual Israelites that's involved in that religion, that man-made religion, they are Khazars and Edomites and other converts. Okay, so because today's race identity makers is all made up to support a white superiority narrative, which is also made up. All right, that the whole whiteness is a made up concept as well, right here in good old America in 1681 in Virginia. All right, that's when they started actually using white as a race in documentation. All right, but there is no white race. There is no black race. People are not white flesh and people are not black flesh. All right, my camera makes her look a little bit darker, but the young lady is brown. All right, her skin is not black, yet someone will very ignorantly call her black. All right, just like they'll call someone white who's not white. It's just pure madness. Okay, and it's funny to me how these people who are claiming, these Idumeans claiming to be the Israelites, never use the Bible to defend themselves. But yet they go to sensitive talking points to try to misdirect from the information in the Bible. And I'm going to point out how Shlomo Sand pointed that out in his book. All right, this particular rabbi, what is his name? Yavitz. All right, this Zev Yavitz. All right, or is he a rabbi or is he a historian? Yeah, Zev Yavitz's Book of History of Israel. All right. I'm going to, read a statement on how he discourages people from actually reading the Bible. So why would Jewish people not want people to really read the Bible? Because when you actually read the Bible, you begin to understand that the Israelites are under specific curses, and the Israelites are described physically down to the T in the Bible. All right. And so the people that are claiming to be the Jews, all right, they don't fit the physical descriptions, nor do they fit the spiritual descriptions of the things that the Israelites would go through. The Jewish people collectively are very well to do, very wealthy, all right, collectively, and in a good place collectively. They don't fill up prison houses. They don't fit any of the curses that is going to be upon the Israelites. But let's let this video play. We're going to let a few minutes of it play just to get you riled up. And then we're going to debunk and destroy the lies that comes forth out of this woman's mouth, all based upon opinion and hearsay, and none of it is based upon fact. It's all based upon a man-made religion. All right? But here we go.
Let me say this here. So the land was stolen from Califia, and her Amazon tribes were forced off their lands and scattered throughout California and the United States. And that was never we were never supposed to be separated. We didn't have separate states, right? And so through numerous illegal governors and city council treaty acts, we discovered that land was stolen.
Wait. Let's go to the scriptures. Illegal treaty acts. All right. I got two in mind right out the gate. First one is Sirach 10:8. I thought I would be able to let it play, but you know what? We're just gonna go through the spirit. And Sirach 10:8 says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, land, all right, the kingdom is translated from one people to another, all right. Isaiah, I believe it's 10:1 as well. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees and write grievances which they have prescribed. So they write these wicked laws into existence that benefit them and only them.
Stolen from Empress Khalifa, and it is the obligation to publicly reclaim their land for redevelopment. Jews that they talk about is us. So when they say Jewish, there's a difference between being a Jewish. Kanye was right when he said, we are Jews. So yes, the indigenous to this land, we're indigenous to all parts of the globe.
And indeed they were. Wow, I didn't even know that was there. And I paused it right on time. Deuteronomy 28:68. The Israelites shall be scattered from one end of the earth even unto the other. And that also, that discredits the modern day Jewish people, because they can't say that. They were all pretty much came from the same few places. All right, they're not scattered everywhere. And it also says in Baruch 2:30 that in the end of days they would remember themselves. According to them, they have records that take them all the way back, which completely goes against Bible prophecy. The Israelites would lose and forget their identity was stripped from them. They were cut off from that God, cut off from that power, cut off from their heritage. And then it says that another people would claim to be them, another people would claim that land, and it just so happens to be biblically proven, historically proven, that the Edomites are the ones in that land, fitting that prophecy, how they prescribe the land to themselves. It said that would be Idumea, All right.
An indigenous community that lead with our history, hopefully, for South American and Central American with North American. We're one continent. That is what our ancestors said.
Yeah. So all of a sudden they they said that a native, because you got to remember, the Apache and a couple of other tribes lived in on the west of near California and Colorado, Nevada, and all those areas, which are now all America, but yet they'll say Native Americans and South Americans, all right? When it's when the so-called Mexican, that was all a part of Mexico, so that would make some of these people, some of these tribes that they call an indigenous or Indians, that would actually make them Mexicans, because it was the land that they were living on was all owned by Mexico. All right, all of California, all of New Mexico, parts of Nevada, parts of Colorado, a lot of land. Arizona, that was all a part of Mexico, the Mexican Empire. Okay. And another thing too is that though they had relics, they haven't renamed them all that too, because these people that were native to these lands, well, I have probably about at least 30 books on my shelf that prove that the natives to the Americas and to the islands were indeed Israelites. All right, but yet you've named them Hispanics, Latinos, Latins, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, Cubans. You've named them all these. You've given them all these false heritages, and then you claim theirs. All right. And another thing too is that here's another very, very telling thing. Well, you know what? I'm gonna save that until when she speaks her nonsense. Then I'll bring that out. But here we go.
And today, more than ever, we got to challenge the white supremacy that is in our schools. We got to challenge the dehumanization of others.
Yeah, because Jewishness tries to separate itself from white superiority when it's deeply rooted in it. When it's deeply rooted in it. Then it tries to separate itself from it when it's deeply rooted in it and supports it. And they are two opposing forces that actually back each other up. All right, by default. And these natives peoples that he's talking about, it was all sorts Hebrew that came from Syria, relics that they brought with them. And the funny thing too is that this woman who's going to speak after him, who says that Kanye wasn't right and that she's Jewish, and everyone begins to clap. I always pose a question to them, especially as of late, and this question is, why do you write in the Assyrian script when the kingdom of Judah never encountered the Assyrian captivity and wrote in the biblical Hebrew, wrote in the Paleo Hebrew? Because all the coins and the money from the Maccabees, see, the lies are starting to fall apart, man. All right? Because the kingdom of Judah never used the Assyrian script. Yet you got a nation of people claiming to be Jewish using the Assyrian script and not using. And you know why they don't use and it dawned on me today when I thought about this. The reason why they don't use the biblical Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew, is because it would just prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're not the people of the Lord. And they could manipulate it with the dots. And that because the problem being is that because these natives peoples here in Americas, they were writing. When they came to the Americas in the 1600s, when the Edomites started coming in and conquering and taking over, they were finding all this ancient Paleo Hebrew, all this biblical, what the Jewish people or Israelis call biblical Hebrew, from Canada to Brazil to the islands. Right, they just found, a couple years ago, not even, all these ancient Hebrew relics in Puerto Rico. All right, so that would make a perfect thing, because when Eleazar ben Yehudi began to, put together the Hebrew, the new revised Hebrew, Yiddish-based Hebrew language that's used today, all right, he used the Assyrian script. Why? Because if you use the the Paleo, then that would be a problem because you already had all these books and all this established history, even in the Smithsonian, of the natives reading and writing and leaving the ancient Paleo Hebrew all over the Americas. You see this?
Peoples, no matter where we come from, that is our ancestors have said. They walked this land before us.
Which was signed in 1835 in Georgia. Part of the promises contained in the treaty, which saw the native lands taken from these tribes in the southeast, where they were forced off their lands at gunpoint. Obviously, almost 190 years later, the provisions of this treaty, which saw those Native Americans be driven from their lands and begin on the Trail of Tears, still hasn't been fulfilled. And for permitting us to join together and for nothing else to say, we're sorry.
We don't want sorry, we want our land back.
For nothing else to say, we're sorry.
In the city of Chicago that replaces Columbus Day.
I would like to condemn the comments that were made by one of our public speakers earlier today. Kanye is not correct. I am a Jew. I represent a very large Jewish community.
And there we go, and they clap. She represented a very long Jewish community. You can be a Jew. You're not an Israelite. You're not a Judean. The letter J is newly created. All right? The letter J was newly created, and the term Jew was only about 200 years old. All right? Use a language that the kingdom of Judah, you write in a form that the kingdom of Judah never used. All right? Right here on page 96 in Shlomo Sand's book, The Invention of the Jewish People, all right, when they invented it, on page 96, back to Yavis, this guy Yavis, he said, not surprisingly, Yavis stuck closely to the biblical narrative, and he was one of the new breed Zionist rabbis who turned, he was a rabbi, the Old Testament from a holy book into a national one, which at the same time inveighed against a secular or reformist reading of it, because when you actually read the Bible, you begin to see that these people are not the people. All right? That's the problem. And I always ask, where are the relics from when you got scattered? Where are the images of you in chains with yokes of irons around your neck? All right? When you do your research, you find out that most of the slave ships were owned by, well, guess who? Yeah. They all had Jewish owners. That's fact. All right, that's not hearsay or slander. That's fact. Okay, let me read one more scripture. I think it's Ezekiel 35 or 34. Yep. No, it's 34. Ezekiel 35:5, and it reads, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. All right? Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee to blood and shall pursue thee, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus I will make Mount Seir most desolate. All right? And so the Lord is coming, he tells you up the top to speak against Mount Seir. And Mount Seir is Edom. And Edom, all right, was Rome, and Rome was Edom. And these are the so-called white people today. And so are the people who converted to Judaism under pagan bullying or Kagan bullying. All right, I guess it was pagan bullying. All right, so with that, I'm going to give all praises, all honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, Wa Ababa Bal, Kwam Yasarala.